Hello, Ken Spriggs here with part 7 of my commission builds of 2 of the Moebius large EVA Pod. And this is a long-term build, obviously, as I pointed out before. But I have gotten to a pretty good milestone on this where I've completed the main controls, the 2 side wraparound and the bottom controls of this pod, which is a pretty significant part. This has been the most challenging lighting that I've ever done. Well, comparable to like the Discovery. Discovery was very challenging because of their very tight constraints. But this was very challenging because of the very large number of controls, the large number of LED strips that I'm using, the light boxes. All told, in just like this interior part, there are 10 light boxes. There are 3 on the right and left side wraparounds, which makes 6, and then there are 4 on the bottom, in order to achieve an even lighting over these large number of controls and display panels. And it involved, as if you've watched previous videos on this build, I've adapted it, readapted it, changed it. I do want to give a shout out to Lou Dalmaso in his build. Ultimately, I had returned back to watch his original build and followed his lead on making the light boxes a 1/2 inch thick and just putting as many LED strips inside that I can fit around the perimeter and on the inside upper flat surface to just flood that area with light. It gives it a more even lighting. And then I found that 1/2 inch distance away was perfect as well for lighting the displays, which all that I have on those is the actual translucent film or gel, whatever you want to call it, that I got. Some are from Paragraphic, some are from, I believe it is EA Monsters. I'll have to check and see. Yes, sorry for the cut there. I went ahead and checked. It is EA Monsters. They're Translite films. I did like theirs a little better. And again, I don't want to make the comparison, but I just like the sizing of them as far as how they fit. So the key was to have them just slightly bigger than the opening in the kit. And then I'll show this process again here on this build, but to use some matte glue from Woodland Scenics that you put onto the outer edge of it and on the inner edge of the opening, and let it dry, and it dries tacky. You basically make it a self-adhesive type of thing. They suggest on the one to use microcrystal clear or something like that, which would work similarly, but no other glues that I could find would really adhere these right. But anyway, so I've mentioned before in the videos that there are a ton of ways to try to light these controls. Some very complex ones to some very basic ones. There's obviously, there's a photo etch version from Paragraphics where you put the photo etch overlay over top of the buttons. There's one also from EA Monsters that has a vinyl that you put over top to cover it. And then you have the method that Lou Dalmaso brought out, which I've used as well, his masking set, which again, I still think is the best version. That's my opinion. You can do whatever version you like, but I like it because it gives you that distinct separate buttons with the black in between each button, so you get the more accurate looking view. You don't just have a bank of white buttons that all glow the same color and then no separations between them. So a little more work in putting all the little teeny buttons over them, but I think the end product, the end result is worth it, well worth it in doing that. So just a bit of a recap. Quite a bit of work to complete this, to complete the control panels. So let's go ahead and look at the finishing up of these, and then at the end I'll give you the final reveal of all the main controls. And they're not complete. I still have to put decals on them and and that kind of thing to finish them up before I get them all attached together. But at least show a reveal of them all lit up and the displays all lit up inside. So let's go ahead and take a look. All right, so I'm working on the light boxes for the bottom section of controls for the space pod. So this one has actually 4. It has a left and right side, depends on how you're looking at it. It has the center pieces, and then it has the 2 displays, which I just have taped in there right now for that. So these side ones are very tricky. The other ones are very straightforward. They're just rectangular, very easy to do. I even use some double LED strips that work just fine. The side one's very narrow and an unusual placement of some of the buttons, especially in the front and the back. I still have to put the colored styrene over on here, as you can see. So I initially made, and there's 2 sets, of course, because I'm doing 2 at the same time. So I have a right and a left and a forward, so I know how they're positioned. So initially I put in the SMDs. I started by kind of wrapping them around, but then it's just, those corners are too tight. So I have one side on, I have one on each side. And this is a set of 3. Each section, the smallest they can be cut to is 3. And one on the bottom, or the top as it were, the back. But I wasn't getting enough light in the back on any of them. So I took this, I have some Mega LEDs, SMDs, cool white. But these are also rated for 7 to 19 volts, so they work on the 9 or 12 volt. And I cut a little hole in the end over here where the other wires are, glued that in there, and I had to play with it, put it like at an angle so it gets this area. There's still maybe one button or a few that aren't quite as evenly lit on some of them, but that's fine. They don't have to all be the same brightness, and that's really kind of what you want anyway. The buttons would not be all the same brightness, they're all the same color, that kind of thing. Some of them may not be engaged. I'm not sure why we have so many buttons anyway on this pod. But I did that with all 4 of them. And then I used some CA glue and accelerant, and I glued the little resistor part onto the back and wired them together so that they're both together. So let me go ahead and put one of these onto the bottom and show you how that's going to look. All right, here we go. So these are yellow and green, and they tend to get washed out. If I get closer, you'll see how they, well, if I can. The yellow obviously is a little brighter than the green, but they don't look quite that difference of a brightness in real life. The camera just picks up the yellow better. Also, it's hard to tell, but in the back there, you can see they're lit up. Just a little bit of unevenness, but nothing major. More bright in the front. Which is fine. So those are going to be good. So let me show you the other ones that I made. All right, so the other ones are very simple. So I just have a rectangular box, and then I have one that has some curves built into it. So the one with the curves, I traced it out until I got the right curves to match up with this curved part here to go over the displays. This middle section here, this bottom middle section, it's just flat. So I just made a box that would go in between those 2 little connector holes, which hold the controls on the top, so that it won't interfere with that. For this one, I actually, because it's shorter, and I did use the double LED strips. So it's there's 2 each, because that's perfect to light it. Just 1 strip actually. But I couldn't really trim any more off, so I just cut a little slit at the end and have it sticking out. And on this one, I just cut a hole in the end for the wires to come out. And when I attach them on, I'll put 5-minute epoxy in that and seal that up, because these are all going to be painted black. And then glued onto this part, and then 5-minute epoxy around them to seal in any gaps and paint it black. That will also increase the effectiveness of the light. It'll seal it in so it won't have as many light leaks. So they're going to be brighter when I do that as well. So, all right, let me put some power on these and show you how those are going to look. All right, and again, the colors are getting washed out. This is how they really look, but I have to get really close. There's your reds. They really look that red and that blue. But they don't come out that way in the camera. Same with the displays, which I've shown you before when I showed the displays. That's how they look. They're more even lighting, but they get washed out in the camera because it's too bright for them to see. But those are going to work just fine as far as lighting those up. So, okay, so I'm ready to go ahead and get some flat black masking initially on all the light boxes that I made, and seal up any of the gaps or the holes with some 5-minute epoxy. And then I'll be ready to go ahead and put them onto here and do a test. All right. All right, so I attached on the display gels. A bit of dust in there. And I used the same method that I had shown in a previous video. What I use is this matte adhesive from Wooden Scenics. It's designed to work with a vinyl grass mat. It has a vinyl backing. You glue it down onto like a model railroad kind of a thing. So, but the way it works, it's really good. It's a very thin, stays tacky. It's very thin like PVA glue. So what you do is you put it along the edges of the parts that you want to stick together and let it fully dry, and it remains tacky. So I put it around the edges of the film, being very careful not to put it in the part where you're going to see, and then along the edge of that. And then when I stick them down after they dry, it's a self-adhesive and it works really well. And then I just use this black stripping to put it around the edge to finish any light blocking that might try to come through. Okay, very cool. So those are ready to go. So what I'm doing now is I'm getting ready to glue on the bottom parts. These side pieces, I cut off some of the front because I'm making sure I'm thinking ahead as to how this is going to fit onto the bottom part. So you have this part, which is the floor in the pod, and this part inside. Those two little holes there are what lines up with two little pins right here. And then these parts back here just come along on this part here. So I had to cut away that whole part right there on the side because of these boxes. And I had to cut away a little bit more of these so that pin would not be blocked, as you can see. You can see where the pin is. All right. So that way I'll still have something to line up these controls to the actual bottom. So, all right, let me go ahead and get these glued in place, and then we'll see how that's going to look. All right, so I have to redo this last light box, the very last one on the controls. There's going to be some other smaller light boxes on this interior lighting. I already had redone these one other time because I'm doing two different sets. I'm doing two different pods at the same time, plus you have two different sides of this wraparound, so they're the opposite. So you have this side, and you have the other side, which is reversed. So when I made the original ones, I cut out the bottom piece like this, and I measured it to match up to this section. And then I glued on the styrene strip like I'm doing here to make the light box. But two of them I made wrong. I made the wrong side. So you'll see, like this one, it's wrong. It's not the right side. So this is not going to work. So what I basically did was I made both the same shape for the two different sides, but they're the opposite. So I redid them. Thought I was being very careful. Obviously I wasn't. The other one's fine. The other one's fine. This is the only one that I messed up again. So these two were good. This one is not. So I'm gonna have to waste these lights and waste this light box. So This is now right. This is now going to be correct. And I wrote inside on it, so it'll go like this. All right, so what I'm doing is I'm going ahead and gluing on the side strips again to make the box, and then I have the LEDs back here, you can see, soldered and ready to go. I'll go ahead and get them inside. That'll finish up the last light box on this other wraparound, and then I can go ahead and show them with the completed bottom lights and show the whole interior lights, at least on one of them, all completed. I have all the light boxes done, so I have to finish getting them all glued on and attached. But let me get this one completed. Let me get this glued in place. I got to get it painted the black to light block it, get all the wiring on it, and then get it in place. All right, and this one will be right finally. All right, so I don't have these glued into place. I just have them stuck down into the sides of this because I still have to put decals on these before I'm ready to attach everything together. But I have all the wiring put together. It's just going into a 9-volt battery right now, which actually looks good on the camera. It's not as bright in real life as it would be with the adapter running it at 12 volts, but it looks better on the camera. So for example, you can see those little screens there a lot better. Look at that. It turns out better because they're a little dimmer. See the different colors of the buttons. All right, looked like a Christmas tree. It's a lot of lights, a lot of controls in this pod, obviously. Let me turn it around the other way and show you the other side. All right, and here's how it'll be viewed from the window, the front window. I didn't realize how vertical these back ones are. They're just basically straight up in the air. And then these lights here, I still have to put a little cover over top of those, seal that in on both sides. Stop light leak, but also to keep the light kept inside to give it a brighter look. There you go, and you can see those displays pretty well. For some reason, these ones come out a lot better on the camera, but these are looking good too. Definitely. All the different colored buttons. And I don't know if I'd mentioned previously, but these are all accurate to the way they're supposed to look on the screen. The instructions, well, they're going by the instructions on the kit. They give you the different colors of the lights, which ones are blue, red, green, yellow, a brighter, like these ones right here are actually supposed to be more of a warm white. So I used only one layer of yellow clear styrene, whereas the other ones, the yellow ones, I used 2 layers to give it a richer yellow. In real life, when they're on the 12 volts, they actually look, well, and even back here, you can tell the difference. Those are warm white versus the yellow right down over here, which are similar. So, all right. It's definitely showing up a lot better on the camera because I'm using just a 9-volt battery to power this whole thing. And I've even noticed as I've been playing with it a little bit, testing it, that they're already starting to dim on it. There's a lot of LED strip tape lighting these up. So there's no way that a 9-volt battery would sustain this for very long. It would drain it within probably less than an hour. But like I said, I'll be using ultimately a 12 volt, and it can run either 9 volts or 12 volts on an adapter. So the nice thing is there's so many lights inside of this that you don't have to really have it as bright as you possibly can. When it's all together, it's all going to look really good, and when it's all inside the pod, it's going to look great. So 9 volts would be fine to run it as well, but definitely looking pretty sweet. All right, so now that these are all wired up and the bottom's all wired up, I have to start working on the back parts, and then working on the top piece that goes over top of this, because there are actually little pieces that light up in those two. Not anywhere near as involved as this, so it won't be quite as insane to try to get all of those lit up. These were definitely quite a chore, but really happy with how that's looking and happy with how that's turned out. So all right, so very happy with how that's turned out, or turning out so far. I did want to kind of point out, and I talked a little bit in the beginning about, you know, the challenge of this kit and all these controls and all the light boxes and things like that. It's always hard to tell when you look at a model what's going to be involved and what you're going to have to do. So to kind of give you an idea, in this video I had to redo just one of the light boxes, one of the 10 light boxes, one of the more complex ones that I kept messing up. So it took me longer, and it took more time invested in building just that one light box than it did for me to light the entire ring on the 2001 Space Station 5 that I'm also working on concurrently, and I showed in my last video. A lot simpler, because of the fact that that has one LED strip around it, one soldering, one set of wires, or 2 wires to solder onto it to come down through, and that's it. No big complexity. Whereas each of these light boxes has multiple points of soldering to connect several different strips together inside, run those wires together, combine them together, and then each side wrap has 3 different light boxes, 4 on the bottom. All those wires had to be connected together. The main issue with all of this is that a lot more chances of you having a broken wire in a short, and then that messes up the whole project. So the simpler that it can be, the better. So I'm very happy that I ended up settling on the rubber coated multi-strand wire, which I've talked about in a past video that I get from Amazon. That just helps me to avoid a lot of that. But just this kit alone is just very, very complex in the amount of lighting to achieve a good looking result. And still quite a bit more lights that go on the inside, plus the headlights on the front and other things going on. So, all right. So very happy with how this is turning out. I will continue my work on the Space Station 5. I'll be continuing work on this one as well. And I'll post more videos in the future as I start working on that. A lot of 2001 building going on right now. Obviously one of my favorite sci-fi films of all time, and the spaceships in it. So, all right. Thank you to all my new subscribers, and I will see you in the next video.